So, career FOMO. This was definitely one of those topics where when we shared this on, I think we shared it on Instagram and on LinkedIn, we got a deluge of responses. So there are some topics I think that just capture people's imagination or perhaps feel very familiar. And I mean, it doesn't make for very happy reading, it has to be said, because most of this is not good stuff. We don't want to have career FOMO. Usually it's not helping to move us forward. Now, hopefully we've come up with something that's going to move us from this FOMO to actually how to make positive progress. So we're going to start with some annotations. So if it is your first time joining us today, we'll let you know in chat how to do this, but we're going to start putting some stars on the screen. To do that, you're looking for something that says view options, annotate, stamp, and then star. If you're on your phone, if you are listening and doing other things at the same time, please don't worry, you can always answer these questions just in chat instead. This is just to warm us up for today. So firstly, let's do our sort of self-assessment for career FOMO. Do you check social media obsessively to see what other people are doing? I mean, that's quite a dramatic phrase, but use the yes, no bubbles below because they're obviously a bit bigger. So that'll just help us as a group to see, does this feel like one where lots of us recognise it? Obsessively might be a bit overkill, but a lot, frequently. And I suppose the important point here is to see what other people are doing. If you're using social media to be inspired or to learn, that's different. But if you're thinking, actually, I end up just getting a bit distracted by, oh, that person's doing that, that person's doing that, let us know. So probably about 50-50, I would say so far. I definitely have recognized this, but it's not a consistent thing for me. And I think when I realize that this is happening, I do sort of think, oh, okay, I might do something about this. Okay, so probably got about 50-50. Yeah, Scott, interesting. Yeah, more habitual to pass tiny moments of downtime. Do you know what I'm experimenting with at the moment is not using my phone in downtime. You know, it becomes like a ritual. I've got really used to. If I have some downtime during the day, I've been like sitting outside this week and being like, oh, I've not got my phone with me, and actually going back inside to get it, and then thinking, why? Like, why am I getting my phone? So I'm trying to not use my phone in all moments of downtime. Joe is not on social media. That is impressive. Right, let's get rid of those ones. Okay, let's get to, I wonder if this is going to be small enough yet. Here we go. Do you experience negative feelings when comparing your career to others? So we are thinking career here. Yes or no? So when comparing your career to others. Let's see how we get on. Yeah. Emma, interesting. Do you know what? Emma's saying she only really competes with herself. That is very Helen. So Helen is definitely a run your own race person. She doesn't really compare herself. I definitely do. But to your point, she just sort of goes, well, I just sort of want to be better. Which is obviously it's a really good, really healthy attitude. Your levels of control over you are much higher than when we compare ourselves to other people. Love that, Tracy. I like the positive vibes. I love my job and my journey. Also, what a nice phrase. Remove myself apart from LinkedIn, off social media apart from LinkedIn. Convincing yourself you need it for work, Caroline. So now you're just addicted to that instead. I do think, as Steve is saying earlier, thinking about where you have social media is interesting. So do you really need it on your phone as well as on your laptop or desktop? I remember Oliver Berkman, when I interviewed him, saying he always thought Kindles were genius because really a Kindle only does one thing well. It's good for reading, especially if you need to read. Like me, I read a lot on a Kindle in the evening when my partner is asleep. And so you're sort of, I never on my Kindle, even though you could browse the internet, I never do because it doesn't really work that well for that. So I quite like, like single device, single use. So lots of us saying yes there. So very, very common. Okay, let's do our next one. Do you say yes at work a lot more than you say no? So this is, you're sort of often saying yes because you have that fear of, well, if I don't do it, what am I going to be missing out on? Want to be involved, want to be involved in everything. Yeah. This one I don't find as hard. I'm very happy saying no. We'll talk about why. Really interesting, I always think, for these to think about, like, what does this mean for you? Because I don't recognize all of these universally. But if you are, as Emma's saying, actually, you've got the disease to please. If you are a people pleaser, you probably say yes more than you say no. If you just think, if you worry about what might happen if you don't say yes, you probably just keep saying yes because you worry about the consequences of saying no. That one's pretty universal there. I'm obviously slightly more the exception to the rule on that one. Does a lack of confidence stop you trying new stuff out in your career? So you actually have ideas, you can imagine what you might like to do, but it's you can recognize and spot that it's confidence. Those gremlins are getting in your way. We spent a lot of time on gremlins in the past month or so together. Yeah, so Steve's saying it's not confidence, it's time. Okay, a few more people saying actually maybe not confidence, which is great. We don't necessarily want it to be these things, but it's just good to have that self-awareness. Okay, next one. A few more to go. Do you get easily distracted and find deep work difficult? So Helen is interviewing Cal Newport, I think either next week or the week after, the king of deep work. His new book, I think, is called Slow Productivity. So yeah, do you find you're like, oh, well, you know, that sort of your brain's in lots of places all at the same time? Teams chat is your nemesis. Yeah. If you do find this is a real challenge for you, I do think Stolen Focus, Johan Hari's work on Stolen Focus, and I interviewed him on the podcast as well, is really worth a read. If this is your biggest challenge and you really want to address this, I think Stolen Focus is very, very helpful. Johan Hari's actually just got a new book out called Magic Pill, which is about, you know, that pill people take for weight loss. So yeah, if you particularly like his work is always very well researched, always very interesting. Okay, let's get rid of that one. Next one, second to last. Have you got shoulds when it comes to your career? Actually, that's all of one, isn't it? I should be earning more. I should have a side project. I don't know. I should be progressing faster. I should be doing this thing that Sarah and Helen keep talking to me about on the podcast, but I can't make it happen. What? Do you have lots of shoulds? Should. Okay, that one's quite universal as well. So I would say of those ones, the ones that lots of people recognize there was a lot of that, a lot of saying yes, and a lot of comparison. But again, figure out, I would say, which are the ones that you feel are getting in your way the most when it comes to your career. So if you sort of think, oh, well, I probably check social media a bit too much, but I don't think it's really getting in my way, then you might be like, okay, well, I can live with that. If you feel like comparison is actually really holding you back, or saying yes is really holding you back, I would encourage you to try and prioritize, because I think we all recognize all of these some of the time, but is there a most of the time? Some of the time versus most of the time. So is there one here where you're like, actually, this one is consistently true, and I can perhaps recognize it when I think about my Squiggly career so far. It's a repeating pattern. It continually gets in my way. Let me know in chat if you were picking one thing, if you were thinking about career FOMO, and which of these or something different feels like the hardest one, the one that feels most familiar, the one that's getting in your way the most. Which one would it be? Bit torn between saying yes, fascinating areas, and gives you learning opportunities, but can feel a bit unfocused for the shoulds, easily distracted, comparison, distracted, the shoulds, definitely the should. Lots of people talking about shoulds. Yeah, interesting. Scott connecting that to the inner critic. You know, who is talking? You know, we talked about everybody has that chatter, that inner monologue in their mind. When we are talking about shoulds, your gremlin's talking to you rather than kind of the best you. Yeah, a few of you actually saying it's kind of fed by a gremlin here, the old shoulds. Interesting. Okay, let me just get rid of those annotations. Okay, so we recognize this. Let's figure out what to do about it. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the common triggers and then what we might try out instead. And then I've got a couple of extra ideas for action for you. But let's take some of these. So if career FOMO, if your trigger is social media. And lots of you were describing social media as being a trigger. Realistically, I like us to be realistic here. What could you try? Let me know in the chat. Or what have you tried? So if this is something you've done successfully, unbelievably, so this happened yesterday. So Helen has taken Instagram off her phone. She's deleted Instagram for a week to see what happens. If you have said to me she was ever going to be able to do that, I don't think I would have. I don't think I thought she had it in her. So yeah, so she's gone for that. I think because we talked about this and she was like, I'm spending too much time scrolling. I'm gonna have a week off. And I think a week feels like for her really challenging, but a good, exactly as Joe's saying, a good experiment. Yeah, so I think seeing these things, that's why I've used the words try rather than like you must do this, because I'm not sure that helps us when we're kind of in career FOMO territory. So what have we got? So people talking about focus apps that block. Yeah, okay, that's interesting, Catherine. So focus apps that block fun apps. I think there are often settings that you can have. We talked about it before. It doesn't really help me, but I know that some people make their screens black and white. I think it's something like you tap it 3 times on the side of your iPhone, everything goes black and white, and then we are much less attracted to it. So that might be an interesting experiment. Do you then spend less time on your apps if everything's just a bit duller and a bit less shiny? One of the things that really helped me on this, by the way, if you've not seen, what is it called? I'm sure some of you will have watched it, the documentary on Netflix about social media. It's called something like Social Dilemma. Might be getting that wrong. I remember watching that and really understanding, oh, okay, social media is designed to be addictive, essentially. It's designed to sort of give us those mini dopamine hits. Do I really want those people to be in charge of me, or do I want to be in charge of me? And it really helped me to start making some choices, like make some choices about social media and how I used it, make it harder to access. So I think a lot of us here are talking about sort of mini barriers. A month off social media turned into a year. Amazing. Try the discipline to read a book rather than scrolling. Great. Oh, Lucy's telling you how to do the grayscale. Thanks, Lucy. I think LinkedIn does count as social media. Yeah. I mean, an interesting question, but certainly because you're scrolling it and it's taking time. I think my question is always a usefulness one. If it's useful, if it's not causing career FOMO, if it's not a negative thing, if it's useful, great. It's when it's getting in your way, I think. Because I definitely, as Freya's saying, I use LinkedIn as a source of inspiration and as learning, but I know the difference between when I'm sort of clicking in and really reading and engaging with something, if you're just mindlessly scrolling, like we can all see the distinction between those two things. Yeah, I agree, Freya. I always think that I want the filter to be better. I know I follow lots of interesting people and that you don't see their content, and that often feels quite frustrating. Your phone goes black and white at 10 p.m, Lee. That's really interesting. Oh, thank you, Sarah. You found that Netflix documentary. Turn notifications off. Yeah, I do that too. What's somebody saying there? Okay, minimalist phone is an app that takes all icons and colour away, Catherine. Amazing. There's also a really good book called How to Break Up with Your Phone, and it's a really short, slim book, and it looks like oh, you think, oh, is this a bit throwaway? How useful can this be? Really useful. One of those short books that you're like, this is actually helpful. It shows that you don't always need to write lots to be useful. So maybe just think about how could you add some barriers? What could you experiment with? I also think, and we'll fast forward, we'll talk a bit about pride in a bit, but do you ever, how do you feel after spending time on social media? Do you feel inspired? Which case, great. Do you feel intrigued? Has it encouraged you to be more curious? All like good words. If those feelings are, I feel down about myself, or I feel like I'm missing out, or I feel like I'm not doing enough, that's probably a clue. So maybe asking yourselves that question, how do I feel after 10 minutes on LinkedIn? Like better or worse, maybe be a bit binary about it. I tend to use my personal LinkedIn for loads of stuff that I'm personally interested in. I use it for book recommendations, fiction book recommendations. So I'm like, perfect. That's really helpful for me. I use it for house inspiration, looking at beautiful houses and thinking, oh, how could I do one tiny slither of that? So I actually often do feel good after spending time on some Instagram. Not universally, but sometimes. So that's that kind of social media. Let's talk now about people and comparison. So if, like me, you sometimes get stuck in a comparison trap, you see other people and then maybe it makes you feel like I'm not good enough. Why do people seem to be doing a better job than me? What might help? What could you try? So for people, yeah, Steve, I mean, if your friend's got a new puppy, obviously you have to stay on Instagram. Super cute. So what could you do? Other people are a source of kind of comparison. Perhaps again, how do you feel? You're feeling worse about yourself. Focus on your own achievements. Yeah, Joe. I think this is the difference between being other focused and sort of own focused. So this is where we're getting distracted by others outside of ourselves, where we probably can't take that much action. And so actually bringing it back to yourself, a kind of I focus, is definitely useful. That's interesting, Kimberly. Downward comparisons help. You have to explain that one a little bit more to me. Maybe that's like who you're comparing yourself to. Sam saying this changed your perspective on comparison. Shine theory. Oh, really interesting. I always try to shift from, rather than feeling less than, what can I learn? So I often will look at other people and think, oh, like, why have I not done that? Or we should be doing that. And I will feel kind of less than. Whereas, and because Helen's very good at this, she sort of taught me to do this. She's like, well, just always ask yourself, well, what can I learn? What can I learn from that person? And then sort of, how do I do that in my own way? Because you're never going to do it in exactly the same way. Oh, interesting, Kimberly. Yeah. So maybe just thinking about your own progress, I guess. Yeah, going, I'm probably not going to be the next Richard Branson, but who knows, you might be. Oh, good recommendation. Thank you for that on digital minimalism. But yeah, when you think about comparison, rather than this kind of less than, like, what have I not done? Maybe just thinking about, well, how could I do something similar? If that actually feels really motivating for me, what would that look like for me? So that's definitely this sort of other versus own. And this is what I have to work quite hard on. What about if you say yes way more than you say no? What could we do? So you're saying yes to everything. What could you do? Get advice from people you look up to. Yeah. Yeah, really nice, Shahina. I really like that, the honesty there of when I feel career jealousy, and that's definitely true sometimes for me too, use it to reevaluate my goals. That's really nice. You've kind of moved that as going, okay, I'm going to use this as inspiration for myself. Perfect example there. You've described that beautifully. Thank you. Yeah, if you feel envy or you're triggered by something, Joe, or undermined, try and see it as a data point. Yeah, really nice. If you're motivated by data, see that as a data point. We'll come back to that in a second. Try different ways of saying no. Really nice, Caroline. So you could say not yet. So not now doesn't mean not ever. I actually find, as somebody who is quite good at saying no, the thing that really helps me is thinking about, so we have something called a Win Watch, which we've talked about on the podcast before, which keeps me very focused. So the Win Watch, we use a quarterly Win Watch, and Helen and I do this together, where we'll say, this quarter, what are the wins that matter most? And so when I look at those things, it helps me to say no, because even this week, I think I've said no to 2 or 3 things that I would quite like to do and would be quite interesting. But I look at the Win Watch and think, but if I say yes to those, I am not going to make progress on the things that matter most. And fundamentally, it's those things that will make the most difference. And so I think having something to come back to, like an anchor to come back to, can help you to say no, because you remind yourself, why am I saying no? And you reassure yourself that it's okay to say no, because you're going to have more time on something else. You try yes and, yeah, that's really nice, or yes, but. Ruth, we don't have a template for Win Watch. I mean, you'd be underwhelmed if you saw it. I'll show it to you all one week. But I mean, it's literally 1 page in Canva. We use Canva like a slide, and I just write them, and I tend to do it, and Helen just sort of nods along. We put 6 things on it, and I put pictures. So I find pictures are quite helpful. So it might be, write 3 chapters of our new book, and I'll put a screenshot of the cover of the new book, just so that it's a visual thing, not just words. And I red, amber, green them with little circles. Yeah, being bottom of the ladder in my team, I say yes automatically. Yeah, get that, Jess, because you've grown up being taught you should do what you're told. I've definitely recognized that. And I just think, just remember that you can kind of maybe break that habit of necessarily saying yes every time. I get that it's different. There's like the pressure is different. But it is okay to sometimes involve people in your priorities. So there, I would take the pressure off yourself and involve your manager. So I would be saying, okay, well, here are all the things that I could do. This is what I think the priorities are, but I'd really like your perspective. Like, have I got these right? It's probably not realistic to do all of these this week. So help me with that reprioritizing. Involve, don't solve, if you feel like you can't do this sort of by yourself. What about this shoulds? I should be progressing faster. I should be, I don't know, running this passion project. I should be pushing myself more. How can we let go of shoulds? Glynis, I like that. The why me can be a good middle response. So like, does this have to be me? Or is there someone else who might be better at this, or who would actually learn a lot from doing this? Oh, Finn, you got to the same answer as me. So I got to, how do you move from should to could? Because I thought, oh, that would really help me. So if I think, well, I should be going for a promotion, I then reframe that to, well, I could be going for a promotion, but is that the right thing for me? So actually, I found shoulds and coulds. That was the reframe I was thinking about as well. So great minds. Start doing something about the shoulds. Yeah. I think as well, just asking yourself the question, are my shoulds shiny objects, or are they coulds? Because sometimes I think the shoulds are just like, when we really dive into them, we don't actually really want to do the thing. We're just like, oh, okay, we need to kind of let go of them. Whereas if they are coulds, then you can start to make some progress. Often here you could use, propelling questions, propelling statements that we've talked about before. So if I was like, well, actually I could start a side project, then you could use that to get to propelling questions. Okay, well, how could I start a side project? I can start a side project if I ... because your coulds will inevitably have trade-offs. There's every could, I think, equals a choice. Well, I could go for that promotion if I don't know, I'm prepared to sit in a lot more meetings, or whatever it might be, which you might be like, yeah, that's okay. So what is the choice or the trade-off that goes alongside that could, and are you up for it? I think is a good question to ask yourselves. Focus on taking small steps. Yeah, really nice. So great example there from Steve. So Steve may be going like, oh, maybe I should do some coaching, whereas actually going, well, I could do some coaching if I make some progress every week. I'd make it really bite-sized. I don't worry about doing it all straight away. I keep working towards it. Really nice way of taking action. Oh, Steve, you're here on a public holiday. Thank you for being here today. We wouldn't be PodPlus without you. So can we turn those shoulds into coulds, and what are the choices? If you've not done this for yourself, I would think about your triggers and what you can try. And here, try and get to actions. Okay, so you might only have one of these. Maybe it's really social media that you really want to think about. What are the 3 things you're going to try? Write them down somewhere. Do a bit of a trigger and try table to be really specific. If you want to make progress, much better to write it down. 2 of the things I just wanted to mention that I think are generally helpful with career FOMO. One, and this has come up quite a few times I've seen in the chat, have a squiggly career success statement. So know, what does it look like? What does squiggly career success look like for you? This could be, you can do this as a vision board. I don't ever do that. I do it as a statement. I have, I think, 3 or 4 sentences, and it literally starts, success for me means ... And you might want to do a mind map first with all of the things that success looks like for you. But I would also encourage you to answer the question, what matters most? So what matters most? So I was thinking about this morning. And my 3 what matters most are ideas, impact, and being there for the moments that matter for my family and friends. So, of course, success means more than that to me. But if I was really, almost if I was crystallizing it and being like really reducing it down to the key things that matter most to me, it's these 3 areas. I need to be in jobs and roles where I can come up with ideas, where I can start from scratch, because that's one of my values. That's what gives me a lot of energy. I want to have a positive impact in the work that I do. I like to be able to feel and see that impact. And I want to be there for the moments that matter. I don't have a massive group of friends, and for this my kind of best friends, and for my partner and my 7-year-old. And I sort of go, as long as that's there, I'm feeling kind of good. So at any moment, if I go, well, I'm comparing myself to somebody, is that actually something I can learn from? Is that something I would like to do, I could do? Or would that actually mean jeopardizing one of these things? If it would mean that one of these things wasn't true, it probably isn't right for me. So this is that point about anchoring it back to the I, to, well, what's most important to me? So if you don't have a vision, a success statement, a mind map about what success looks like for you, I'd really recommend doing that. It will really help with career FOMO. The other thing, and I really saw this from the statements that we got from people about career FOMO, this does not make us feel good. It definitely makes us feel more pessimistic than optimistic. And so you might recognize some of these things around pessimism. Sometimes we take things really personally, and that often sounds like, well, it's my fault that I'm not further forward in my career. It's my fault I've not found time to ... It's my fault I say yes to everything, even though perhaps it feels like there's a lot of pressure to do that. Or perhaps you feel like it's very pervasive. So I feel like I'm not making really good progress in any part of my life. So every part of my life, there's so many shoulds. I should be doing more exercise. I should be eating better. I should be working harder. So maybe it feels pervasive, or maybe it feels permanent, which feels like my future. So you can't imagine things changing. Where you are today, you know, if you sort of feel like I'm never going to be as good as other people, it feels like a very like where I am, I can't imagine a point in the future where things will be better. You can't envisage a better point. Just recognize whether one of these feels more true for you than another, because then you can think about, okay, well, what might be the counterpoint? What might help me feel more optimistic if one of these things is sort of one of the triggers for career FOMO? If it's my fault, involve other people. Get some fresh eyes feedback on your situation. Get somebody else who's going to help you to be more empathetic towards yourself. These people are you're your own worst critic people. So find someone who's your best friend and go and talk to them, and someone who gets your world of work, not just your actual best friend. If it's my life, try and make sure that you've done, if you've not already, through Gremlins, a pride postcard. So, okay, there might be quite a lot of things that feel hard at the moment in different parts of your life, but what do you feel good about? What do you feel proud of? Pride is a really good counterpoint to pessimism. And finally, if you're thinking about my future, answer the coach yourself question. What do I want to be true in 12 months' time that isn't true today? What do I want to be true in 12 months' time that isn't true today, which will help you to be specific about imagining, well, what do you want to change? Back to that point about choices. Once you've answered that question, then you can think about the so what now. Now I know the changes I want to make. What action can I take today? And I'd recommend Steve's action there of like, then you break it down and make it bite size. Coach yourself question. Caroline, sorry, I ran out of space there because my writing got a bit all over the place. No problem. So I hope that's been helpful. Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Yeah, I use that question all the time. I really like it as well. And it just reminds us again to take ownership. Coach yourself questions are good about bringing ownership kind of back to us and what matters to us. Thank you so much, everybody. Next week's PodPlus is not on. Sarah, am I making
Yes, that's right. No PodPlus next week due to
PodPlus.
diary commitment.
Due to, I think, Helen and I both being in 2 places at once. I think we're not quite sure how we're even going to do next week. So 1 week off. Sorry for that. I know that's a bit annoying. And then we will be back. Next week's podcast is with David Allen. If you do listen, let me know what you think. I hope it's okay. I have to re-listen to it today to do the pod sheet and pod note. It's quite a different tone. I'm slightly nervous about it, as some of you might have gathered from how I've talked about it. So I'll be very intrigued to see how we all get on next week.